Number one Ibble Dibble here. Hello, friends, and welcome to my new series, Harry and Meghan's Dirty Game. In this series, I'm going to explore all the antisocial and underhanded methods they use to get what they want, no matter who or what they hurt in the process.
No one knows the full truth. We know the full truth. It's a dirty game.
Today, I'm going to talk about a classy alternative to her mortifying word salad. Classy girl Meghan should have learned way back when she had a classy girl custom license plate. Effective rhetoric.
Here's mine. Classy girl on my plate holder. Yeah, the ex-boyfriend got that for me.
In today's episode, we're exploring why Meghan Markle plays stupid. Why Meghan Markle will do literally any speaking engagement where she can buzzword blast, virtue signal, and victim blame, and try to turn any event where she's not even supposed to be speaking, like Invictus or Kevin Costner's charity event, into an opportunity for same, despite being roundly and repeatedly mocked for years on end. Of course she has an ulterior motive. She always does. This video is going to be a two-parter. Part one, this one is more of an appeal, a complaint, a rant, an existential question. And part two will be getting down to brass tacks. The other day I was listening to and I do admire them both, but it happens to us all occasionally, boring conversation between David Krakauer and the late great Cormac McCarthy. They mostly chatted about their math hobby, but at one point bemoaned the present day absence of what were once common cultural references for conversation, derived from the classical education received, albeit in very varying quality, by most in the Western world of, say, middle class and above, up through perhaps the 70s or 80s. This sort of education certainly persists, but has largely gone by the wayside in all but the very best schools for different reasons. When I think of Meghan and her dumb litany of "no one taught me how to use a fish knife" style complaints about the royal family, I always wonder how much of her ignorance is feigned, because her supposed ignorance does kill two birds with one stone. First, it makes her husband feel intelligent, superior, and relied upon, which he loves because, let's be honest, few people manage to make him feel that way. But it also recruits the lowest common denominator to her fan club. And in my opinion, it's no mistake that she chooses the lowest common denominator for her fan base, because they are easily persuaded by buzzwords and cliche. They suspect they are too dumb or ignorant to understand, and therefore repeat this received language either verbatim or with added belligerence, the degree of which seems the only originality or verbal flourish their speech bears. True stupidity of this kind is difficult to argue with. It's tiresome to fact-check statements intentionally composed entirely of lies, exaggeration, and misconstruction. It's tiresome to point out every logical fallacy in every iteration of an entirely illogical argument. Moreover, it's impossible to feel you're accomplishing anything because these people, or paid for combination of Wumaos and bots, don't appreciate reason or truth or the common good. They take a ridiculous Delinda est Carthago stance towards anyone criticizing Meghan, ridiculous because their moral, cultural, and legal short-sightedness is reprehensible, but also because it's a war they can't win. Sugars, you're not going to win this one. Meghan, you're not going to win this one. Not because you're on the wrong side of history, though you are, or because people you imagine are your friends and allies will use and discard you at their convenience, which they will, but because I'm guessing you're going to run out of money to pay the greedy, unethical, antisocial journalists, fact-check services, Twitter researchers, tabloids, think tanks, suspicious academics, sugars, bots, and trolls before we, your critics, run out of time to talk about you. Furthermore, by using these same tactics year after year, your playbook has become obvious, rendering it ineffective. Everyone's onto you. Possums, let me know what you think in the comments below. Is she dumb as a box, dumb like a fox, something else? As a path of least resistance narcissist, does she not realize that alternating, demanding to be recognized, is
The smart one, forever and ever and ever and ever.
with expecting us to believe her when she plays dumb?
There was no guidance as well, right? There were certain things that you couldn't do, but unlike what you see in the movies, there's no class on how to speak, how to cross your legs, how to be royal. There's none of that training. That might exist for other members of the family. That was not something that was offered to me.
Has caused her immense reputational damage. Being royal means advocating the best interests of the everyman while assiduously avoiding courting the canaille, and there are few things less regal than Meghan's constant catering to this milieu. In depicting the social dynamic of the working royals, Meghan always recites the same silly complaints about how there were no How to Be a Duchess textbooks or seminars, though we know there actually were etiquette and protocol guides and meetings, research and reference binders, and longtime ladies-in-waiting on hand to aid and instruct. I always felt, in lamenting the supposed lack of instruction in her duties, she was actually tacitly intimating that she simply had so little in common with the working royals, she didn't know any of their references or get any of their jokes, and they quickly tired of attempting witty repartee with her, leaving her feeling rejected and isolated. As Meghan loves to say, seeing is believing, and I think the royals saw how clueless, phony, and dull she was long before they found out she was also scheming and abusive. Have you ever heard the phrase, art doesn't exist in time, it has entry points? I suspect after opening the door for her 4 or 5 times, the royals expected her to find it herself and she just never could, and still can't bear to admit it. If they hadn't initially planned on limiting her role within the family to full-time dunce distractor, this failure to click doubtless condemned her to it. Unable to see her own shortcomings, I guess she was unable to bear the thought of babysitting Harry and occasionally Jack Brooksbank at the kiddie table for the rest of her life, while the rest of the family carried on in adult conversation. Yet, once free of the royals, instead of trying to better herself in any way, her narcissism forced her to double down on stupid, aggressively pursuing the insipid followers the royals denied her, as evidenced by her rhetoric in the years since Megxit, devolving to the point where it now consists solely of panting and treacle. Logos, pathos, ethos, and kairos are so unbalanced and unconvincing in her oration, Aristotle would have called her an idiot 2,400 years ago. And that's another reason why I think Meghan may well be aware of how farcical her social justice soft-shoeing is, but persists nonetheless, lest we forget dear old daddy paid for her to go to a very expensive Catholic school, followed by, get ready for the shock of your life, a school currently ranked as one of the top 10 universities in the United States, where she supposedly graduated with a communications degree, majoring in theater and minoring in creative writing. So she should have received at least the rudiments of the classical education mentioned earlier, and was doubtless taught, if by another name, the trivium: grammar, logic, rhetoric. Grammar is knowing what it is people are saying and what all the words they are using really mean. Logic is knowing if what they are saying is internally consistent and sensical. Rhetoric is knowing how much you've been dazzled by timeless euphonic formulas. I often harp on Meghan's poor grammar and logic on this channel, but that doesn't mean her rhetoric is any better. In fact, we should thank her for her unbelievably poor rhetoric. Its cringiness draws our attention to faulty grammar and maliciously bad logic we might otherwise overlook. To quote Marsilio Ficino, the truth does not require the adornment of words. Therefore, in order to make your argument as persuasive as possible, it's necessary to strip it down, not dress it up. Rhetoric is perfect, not when there's nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. Does Meghan not realize clinging to the mic for as long as possible and babbling as much as possible renders transparent her intentions to obfuscate rather than educate? And why does she insist, especially recently, on delivering her drivel with the disdainful cadence and resentfully performative tone of a cult leader an hour and a half deep into the day's sermon? Sometimes I think she's no longer even trying to persuade, trick, or incentivize we the public into her polarized thinking, just nag us until we accept it. There are plenty of rich and powerful people with zero fashion sense and fewer morals, and and many of them rely on buzzwords and platitudes, but Meghan is an exceptionally incompetent sophist, the undisputed queen of clowns. Though we perceive her word salads as a series of bungled buzzwords pulled from trite scripts she's recycled for years, yet still manages to mix up half the time, we must remember she chooses her scripts for any given event, brushes up on her buzzwords, and lightly edits to incorporate some stolen quote or quip or anecdote, practices delivering her sound bites without slurring her Valium voice too much, spends a week on rodeo buying what she thinks is a perfect outfit, has a professional glam squad arrive at the break of dawn to handle her hair and makeup, books her private jets, books her personal photographer and videographer, plans and coordinates with them the shots she wants to get, practices her Buddha smile, washes a handful of Xanax down with a glass of wine, and starts tapping. To the thinking person, everything she wears, says, and does is so cringe, it seems like a series of mistakes. And it is in a long-term reputational sense, but not in the sense of any of it being at all accidental. Slouchy, slow-mo, saintly sap is a strategic choice. She actively made and makes and executes because she's not trying to impress us. She's targeting the kind of people who really are a little bit too compassionate and empathetic and hopeful and willing to make all kinds of excuses for her. In her mind, she's still the smart one, playing stupid to get what she wants. She doesn't care to heed advice about how to elevate her image or present cogent arguments because she doesn't want to compete for presentable, rational fans. She wants a base of desperate, delusional dreamers. Side note, do I believe Northwestern pays big money to manipulate their stats to rank higher than they really should? Yes, I kind of do. Do I think Meghan's father did a solid 1/3 to 1/2 of her schoolwork, including full rewrites of all essays, including her college applications? And that's why she lived mostly with him during high school, even though her mom was a mostly absent, inappropriately permissive type who would have allowed her to use their apartment as a party house in order to become very popular with the other girls and the boys at their brother's school? Yes, I do. Just my opinion, based on the Ivory Soap debacle, where Thomas demonstrated to us how very, very far, how unethically far he would go for his daughter. But even so, is it really possible that in 8 years of formal education, she missed all of this? Could she really have been daydreaming about Birkins and her Oscars acceptance speech for 8 years? Do you believe Meghan is truly incapable of subtlety and critical thought? Is she unable to recognize it in others? Is she simply unable to acknowledge it? Please let me know in the comments below your opinion on why in the world she affects this groveling superiority and whether or not she realizes how off-putting it is. Remember, rhetoric is not just the art of speaking, it's the skill of recognizing and defending oneself from interpersonal manipulations and general propaganda. What language is appropriate for civic engagement? How does a kufala like Meghan try to control civic discourse? Friends, listeners, we cannot let Meghan, Harry, and their goons go unchecked and unanswered, even if they are, or at least one of them is, dumb enough to believe the things they say. Because if we do, we normalize and tacitly accept the redefinition of disinformation as any opinion disagreeable to the rich and powerful, arbitrarily yet harshly punishable when voiced by plebes. If, unlike her, you don't care to be perceived as a victim, let me know your thoughts, and please join me for the next installment where I really break down Meghan's best and worst figures of rhetoric. That's my rant for today. Toodles! Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.